Welcome to Auto Car Nerd, and today we're driving another BMW because BMW are awesome. And the car we're driving today is the E60 model. It's a 325 with an inline 6. It's a 2.5 liter engine, 192 horsepower, 235 newton meters of torque. The E60 model, which this is, was launched back in 2003 and was in production all the way to 2010, and in that time they built over 1 million cars, and you have a ton of different engines to choose from, everything from a 2-liter diesel all the way up to the BMW M5, which has a V10 with 500 horsepower. So you have a lot of options, let's put it that way. I've driven some diesel models. I've driven the 535D, 2 of them, and that is a great car. That car has pre-facelifted 270 horsepower-ish and 560 newton meters of torque, and it's a monster of an engine, and it's so silky smooth, and it's a highway cruiser. This is the petrol version, of course. I would not prefer this over a diesel because I live in Europe and fuel is quite expensive, but I can definitely see why you want the petrol engine. If you live in America, then it's no reason why, because you couldn't get the diesels, I guess, so you have no choice. The car was facelifted back in 2007. This is a pre-facelift model. In 2007, what they changed was the look of the car. So you have different bumpers, different lights, front and back, and some different interior panels. And most importantly, you got an updated gearbox. This has the 6-speed ZF gearbox. It's an automatic. You can also get in a 6-speed manual. But in 2007 they updated the gearbox, so the gearbox, this thing is electronically connected to the gearbox, which means you get smoother shifters and better fuel economy, and it's a bit more faster, especially if you put it in sport. And in manual it's definitely more connected, I guess. Other things they fixed with the facelift, some of the early cars had some squeaking rattles from the interior. They fixed that with the facelifted model. And the E60 is the best car in its class at the time. So it was better than the A6, it was better than the Mercedes E-Class, and it was better than other cars in that class. The reason why is because it has that BMW-ness. It has a great chassis, it has a great drivetrains. BMW engines are the best. Diesels or petrols, all of them are really good, whichever you choose from. You have a great chassis, like I said. And the automatic gearboxes are not the best. They are not as good as the modern day dual clutch systems, but they're still decently good, and you can still have a lot of fun on them. Not the fastest car in the world, but it does get up and move, especially if you choose to have bigger engine models. So how about reliability? They are extremely reliable, these cars, overall. We have some earlier models had the problem with the diesel engine. They have it's called, I'm gonna check so I'm not incorrect. They have something called swirl flips inside the intake manifold, and if that thing falls off, it can go through the entire engine, and if you're unlucky, inside the turbo, and the engine will be ruined, and you have to buy a brand new engine for your car. And that is on the earlier diesel models. The petrol engines do not have that problem. The M43 engine, which was the brand new inline 6 engine that was launched back in 2007 after the facelift, and that engine had an idling problem, which was never really fixed, but it's not a big problem, but it's still a problem, I guess. You also have a problem with some NOx sensor, which means that the CO2 will be higher, and you might not pass the MOT or whatever it's called. But that's a quick fix. If you have an automatic, check that the fluent has been changed at least once, because if you're not especially if you have a higher mileage car. BMW say you don't have to change the gearbox fluid, the oil inside the gearbox, but you should do it because it's a very inexpensive thing, and it's much cheaper to replace a gearbox, a oil, than an entire gearbox. There are a ton of them on the second-hand market, the BMW E60s. You can find a bunch of different ones with all kinds of different options. You have a ton of options in this car, of course, because it's a big family sedan. Of course, the BMW E60 was the first 5 Series with this iDrive system. The E39, which was the predecessor, did not have the iDrive system. Speaking of which, this car is actually lighter than the E39, but it feels much lighter somehow. But back to the iDrive system. The iDrive system is very, very outdated, especially pre-facelift, which this one is. The graphics are very old, it's very slow, and it's overall a pain to use. But if you own this car, you will get used to it, of course. But compared to the modern day iDrive system, it's very, very bad. When the facelift had come out, they also updated the iDrive system, of course, but it was not a big improvement, so you still get the horrible iDrive system. Other things you should look for when buying one of these: dynamic drive, which is basically what this does is when you drive normally, like I'm doing right now, it will have the suspension very supple, very soft, and then when you want to drive a bit more spiritually, it will stiffens up the suspension. Another options are adaptive steering, for example, which was a $800 option back in the day. It's not, if you can find an E60 without it, you should prefer it, because the adaptive steering is not the best. Speaking of the steering, E60s have great feel in the steering. They have some feel at least, but yeah, it's kind of light, but it's very accurate. You can place the car exactly where you want it. The interior of the car, the quality is still very good. I mean, this car is 10 years old now, this particular version, 15,000 miles, and it feels very solid. Of course, I've driven some E36s, E60, sorry. That had a bit nicer interior than this particular model. But this thing has a decent interior actually. But the quality again is very good. I would recommend the diesels if you live in Europe, because they are awesome, especially the 535, 530, or even the 525D after 2007. And those are great diesel engines, and you get the updated gearbox, and it's a highway monster. It's very comfortable, and you can just drive endlessly, and it's extremely comfortable. But overall, for the price of this car right now is 90,000 Swedish crowns, which is 9,000 euros. You can't find a 4-door sedan that is this good for that price. Of course, you can get a 7 Series or an A8 or something like that, but for the price, it's, I think, the best sedan you can buy. It has everything you want. It's fun to drive, it's very comfortable, it's very cheap. Maintenance costs are quite cheap on this. Brakes, of course, are a bit more expensive, and you're gonna eat through brakes if you have the more powerful engine ones. But overall, it's no more expensive to maintain than an Audi or a Mercedes or something like that. They're quite cheap to maintain. I think oil change is like overall it's very cheap. And of course, with the E60 you get, like I said, a lot of options. So you have lane change assist, head-up display, you have massage seats, so you have different options you can get. But overall, a great car, and yeah, you should definitely buy one if you're considering a car in this price bracket. Thank you for watching this quick drive in the E60 sedan. If you liked the video, you can leave a thumbs up and subscribe. It will help me a lot. And hopefully I will come with more reviews with more powerful cars. Stay tuned.